Thank you so much and welcome to Milaap's conversation series. And I'm very happy that we are starting this series with you because one is you have been a huge influencer in my journey of healing, of being able to come out of the situation that I was, even in terms of, I think, legally closing my case. And I'm happy that we are starting you as the first guest for this series, right? So one is I want you to introduce yourself because you've had a very interesting journey. Although you started as your career as a lawyer and now as a spiritual healer, so tell us a little bit more about it.
First of all, thank you so much, Gazal, for giving me this opportunity to be a part of your educational sessions for all of us. And I believe that it doesn't correlate with the alphabetical order also, in which my name starts, that you have given me this opportunity.
No,
Nevertheless,
there is no intention to keep it alphabetic.
I'll trust you for that. And thank you so much for once again for giving me this opportunity. So, telling briefly about me, I uh, started my professional career as a lawyer, as a practicing lawyer. Uh, Mostly about 10 years into practice, 10 years, good practice, doing matters in relating to civil laws, relating to matrimonial conflicts also. And somewhere down the line, uh, you can say that my wife became the mode for me to get into a spiritual healing modality called Serenity Surrender. I went over there just out of curiosity to learn what it is exactly all about. So when I started learning the aspects through this modality, I could actually apply them to my life and see and correlate with each and every events happening in my life were actually meant to give me some higher perspective of. So when I started learning the aspects through this modality, I could actually apply them to my life and see and correlate with each and every events happening in my life were actually meant to give me some higher perspective of the people in India, especially in all kinds of societal setups in India, are undergoing a separation.
Hmm.
And when this separation happens, now they're able to accept that this separation is there amongst the couples. So it was quite intriguing for me because when I started answering a few questions on those online forums, I can say that I received about 3 calls per day asking
Hmm.
me about the legal aspects of going through a divorce. And many people were just thinking over it in the nascent stage of whether they should go in for a divorce or not. So it was not more of a legal consultancy, but they were still looking for my opinion or my personal opinion that whether they should go in for a divorce or not. That entailed asking them further about what exactly are their experiences in their marriage that has led them to think over this aspect also. So it was quite intriguing for me that I was not only acting the as my role of a lawyer over there or as a legal counsel over there, but also as a person who was uh, being an audience to their emotional expressions, also about their experiences, their trauma that they have gone through those
Hmm.
moments in their matrimonial life. And it was more than legal consultancy that they were seeking from me. And the more that I heard from them, I used to get a little wary about whether these instances don't start playing in my own personal life also.
Yeah, I remember at that point saying that I started empathizing with the lawyer community, saying that I think they come across a lot of trauma and pain on a daily basis, with a lot of conflict and people, at war with each other. Unlike doctors who also go through that, but at least they have the joy of curing and helping people come out healthy. But what do you think is the reason for so many couples separating?
See, there are many factors to it actually involved in a person going through a divorce, or even the person have. There are many instances in India wherein people are living separately within the same household also. They are not
Mm,
performing their matrimonial obligations at all. They are just living for the sake of maintaining the status before the society as a married couple. And there are many cases wherein people are living separately in different households also, but they have not taken the step of dissolving their
mm,
marriage through the legal procedures also. So there are many factors involved in it. As I said that when I joined spirituality, I could actually connect the dots with each and every events of mine. I was always on the lookout for this also while I was in the legal profession, because I could never understand how and where to put each and every client into one uh,
mm.
bracket of understanding.
Yeah.
Everybody came with their own aspects, with their unique aspects of dealing with the matrimonial issues. One would be through emotional trauma that they have suffered, one would be through physical abuses, one
Mm,
would be with regard to not even enjoying the company of their spouse while being in the same household also. So there were many factors to it. Uh, when I started joining these uh, links while I took up the role of a spiritual healer also, I could actually see that these events actually relate back to our childhood days also,
mm,
wherein we were wherein we live in a society of, let's say, being a part of a joint family.
mm.
You would say that in 70s or in 80s the concept of joint family was very much prevalent till then, and it meant that there would be a household of, let's say, a minimum of 10 people in a family unit, and everybody would be on the search or in the search of proving their worth or their value in that
Mm.
unit. Sometimes people were able to correlate with that, sometimes people were able to prove their worth also, but there used to be a constant need to prove our identity while being in that family also.
So
And
that has changed over the years, and now people don't find the need to be part of a very empty relationship where there is probably no companionship, no intimacy, no connect, no friendship, and they choose that they would want to maybe not immediately, but they would like to explore being out of the relationship. I also know that while these are aspects which people want from their marriage, there are also more serious issues which make people leave that marriage, which are domestic violence, abuse, trauma. There is, of course, dowry harassment. Um, when I interact with a lot of people who are on the brink of their divorce or separation, or who have taken the step, although it is very painful for them, they walked out of that marriage because they realized that they could no longer maintain their sanity, whether it was domestic violence or whether it was facing infidelity of their partner, or it was just a sheer lack of self-respect that they faced while they chose to move out. A lot of them are still not happy because they say they feel guilty, and they are not sure whether they took the right step, or was it were they just being too selfish. So did you come across people who went through the same?
yeah, absolutely. I came across certain clients who were actually continuously suffering from physical abuse meted out by their husband or by their in-laws also, but they never spoke about it, or they never spoke about it to their parents also. I remember a particular case of one of my very good friends also, whom I used to meet every fortnight. She used to have some kind of a scar on her body. Whenever I asked her, she would never give me the proper answer to it. I could understand what she was going through, but I could not even speak to her because she was not ready to speak out. So there's a lot of problematic situations which come over when the other spouse does not speak out.
Mm,
If you can learn to say no at that time itself, the uh, hunger of the other spouse to show their dominance over you will be curved by more than 50% at that
Mm.
situation. They'll have to find many other ways to actually rattle you then. So that should be a plus point. But yes, when you're in that kind of hostile environment, you tend to miss out on regaining all your thoughts or regrouping your abilities to deal with that kind of situation. And yes, unfortunately, there are many people still suffering by this aspect. When we talk about infidelity, I still believe that marriage is a two-way relationship, and it is meant to bring two people together in one relationship. That is why still in India we call it as a sacramental union.
Mm.
Much you would say there's a lot of importance or significance of a marriage happening in India. That is why all the rituals are still followed in its pith and substance. Then only the court, even the courts recognize it to be a valid marriage. So when there is an infidelity, I still believe that there is a chink of breakage in the relationship that leads to either of the spouses to get into an extramarital relationship.
Mm.
One would say that that person was pushed by the other spouse to get into that kind of a relationship or look for happiness or peace outside the relationship itself. And the other side who would believe that they are the victims of such unfaithfulness from their spouse would also feel that they had done everything that they wished to do to keep the marriage happy, but could not actually do anything about it still. Then they start putting the blame on the situation or on the spouse itself, or even on their parents for not even facilitating or putting that good
Mm.
sense in the spouse to remain truthful towards the marriage. But somehow
So,
still
so
we are.
Akhilesh, when all of this doesn't happen and people do take the big step of moving out, I have noticed that a lot of people, despite the decision, which actually helps them to be more safe and more sane, do feel a lot of guilt having walked out of the marriage. I think primarily what the physical guilt that they see are the children who don't stay with them. Even sometimes people, custodial parents who have the children with them, sometimes they don't. And if you are a non-custodial parent, there is, and you have made the choice to walk out of the marriage, there is larger guilt and various feelings of, or voices that people tell you saying, were you being selfish? Were you being too ambitious? Are you asking for too much? The older generation says that what is this whole companionship that you're seeking in marriage? We never had all of these things. We were just told to get married to so and so, and then live together, have children, and that's what marriage was all about. So are a lot of conflicting voices, and a lot of times parents are not able to feel at peace, and they're always feeling guilty. So what would be your advice for parents or people who have chosen, I'm sure after a lot of thought, that they would want to move out?
See, coming before coming to the advice, I would also love to understand them also. And based on what my understanding has been over the past more than a decade over these relationships, also is that when we talk about a person having a guilt, there is a sense of guilt in both the parents, even in a parent who has the custody of the child, because he or she believes that because of his or her acts, the child has been deprived of the other parent's love and affection, and in fact, their presence also in their lives. At the same time, the non-custodial parent would be under that guilt that had they made the marriage work out, they would have still been able to take care of the child. So yes,
Right.
the welfare of the child would maybe that is important or not important at that aspect, but it is more about recognizing our own choices or our own experiences that we wanted through that marriage or through the company of that child also. So
Mm.
when we talk about the guilt part, guilt always comes hand in hand with the blame aspect also in our lives.
Mm.
So And it all boils down to the root of expectations, as I was talking about earlier also. Because when our expectations are not met, then let's take for an example of a homemaker who believed that she would be giving all the time and attention towards her husband and also to the child, and performing all her duties as an Indian homemaker is required to do so. But somehow she doesn't receive that kind of love or that kind of respect from either the child or from the husband that she
Hmm.
anticipated, even after doing everything right, as was told to her by her parents or by her ancestors also. So there comes in the breakage of the expectations that actually leaks into our system of bringing in conflicts within us, and that leads to a severance of the relationship. So when this severance happens, then also we are still not aligned with our choices, because we feel that the circumstances were such that pushed us to make that choice of separating from the marital union, and that also caused kind of a breakage, or you would say, yes, a breakage for the child also to garner the love and support of both the parents at the same time. Responsibility on us that we have been talking about, and we have fixed the responsibility first on the situation, then we shift our blame towards the spouse, then we shift our blame towards the parents because they
Hmm.
never facilitated in reuniting the couple, and then we shift our blame towards the entire societal setup because we feel that the setup was such that which made me operate in such a fashion. We keep
Hmm.
playing through these blames, and somehow we forget to understand one basic aspect over here, that when we take any kind of action or when we take any kind of decision, we think that whatever we are doing is right. We tend to forget at that time that what the other person is also saying is right in his own perspective.
Hmm.
What may be right for me may not be the same for the other person.
Right.
And when I
So you're
step out of the
saying that
relationship also, yeah.
so you're saying a lot of times the blame is also coming from the ex-spouse or the partner, because of the messages that you continuously receive from them, saying that this divorce is because of you. You were not able to do one, two, three. You're not a good mother. You're not a good wife. So you're saying that at that point, to understand and rationalize with yourself that the opinion that is coming is somebody else's perspective. It is not necessarily what I am. And at that point, to come out of this whole blame and guilt from as messages which are coming from people and messages which we are giving to our own self, right? So I think dealing with our own self is much tougher than dealing with people, because you can shut them out, but the voices and the thoughts in your head will not go away. So so I think that has been a dilemma for a lot of folks, a lot of people. I would say to a large extent, women feel more guilty than men. So I don't know if I should make that biased gender statement, but in cases where there are children involved, and if they choose to walk out because there was, let's say, there was no companionship and there was no togetherness, they face a lot of guilt that they inflict first on their own self, and as messages from other people as well. So, Akhilesh, I want to ask you. You discussed, I think, a range of topics, from why people are opting to separate, the history behind it, the way society has changed, as well as what really goes on in the mind of people when they choose to take this step. I do hope, despite all that I have experienced and the work that I do with families, that nobody ever should opt for this. But sometimes I think, for the sake of their sanity, as well as their own self-confidence, their own safety, people need to take this step. I know sometimes, a lot of times, children do become collateral damage. However, at the same time, as something to sum up this segment, as a healer and as a lawyer, although there are two different personalities there, what is the advice that you would give to people, who have, let's say, separated, but who continuously look back at the past with a large amount of guilt?
First of all, as a lawyer as well as a healer, it is the same me who is speaking now. So yes, both the roles have merged into me, and I definitely speak out of my own understandings and experiences from what I've seen and observed also. So for each and every individual out there who feels that they are in a situation of a guilt also, because the guilt again, I would say that it arises when what I believed as right at one moment becomes wrong for me in the other moment, and that trickles in the guilt within me that what if had I not reacted in such a manner, or what if I had not overreacted in that manner, or what if I had put the abusive spouse to my expression in the first moment itself, it would not have led to such kind of chain of events that I'm facing right now. So what if, or the guilt, or had this been, or buts, these keep crossing our minds. Doubts are the basic nature of a human being, but these doubts only come over to make us recognize what we are and what we are meant to be. So it's not about the past which defines us, it is about the current moment which defines us where we are. So, yes, it is not very easy to say that you forget the past, and I never believe that you can ever forget the past also. But somehow we can always be in gratitude towards ourselves that we took this decision of separating for the better part of my life. And rather than putting our focus only on the situations that led me to take this decision, we can put our focus on what we have at present and always grow through that. So today, if I say that I would take an example of one of my very good friends also, who's been my client as a for my healing sessions also now. She used to be constantly humiliated by her in-laws, and her husband never took a step for her. And she also continued to remain in that hostile environment for a good 8 years. When she decided to take the extreme step of moving away from that household, she even went to the extent of leaving her child with the in-laws itself or at the matrimonial house just because she wanted to experience her freedom. Today, she feels that guilt that she left her child just to be a little more, just she would say that she was selfish as of now, but she now realizes that it was meant to be for the better part of us, because this journey is all about our self-recognition. We facilitate each and every person in our journey, yes. We understand ourselves through our roles as a spouse, as a parent, as, let's say, a sibling, or even as a child. We understand ourselves, we facilitate each other through that role only. You were always meant to be where you are. And while we understand the higher perspective behind this, we can find peace and happiness within ourselves in this current moment itself. And this is what we are meant to be at each and every moment: peace, happiness, and the joy that we experience.
Right. So I think those are three words which are very apt for the topic that we were discussing.